The people responsible for making Volkswagen's performance-focused R models have been exceptionally busy over the past few years. There have been R versions of the Golf, the Arteon, the Tiguan and even the Touareg, although that model has been dropped due to slow sales. This model, though, has not been dropped. This is the Volkswagen T-Roc R, and along with the less potent versions, has been treated to a midlife facelift. You get some higher quality soft touch plastics and a slightly redesigned front end. Not that many fundamental changes then, and that's almost certainly a good thing because it means the T-Roc R's recipe of a 300 horsepower, 2-litre turbocharged engine, 4-wheel drive and 7-speed dual-clutch automatic gearbox remains unchanged. It also means that the T-Roc R will be competing for your money with other cars from the Volkswagen group of brands. Those include the Audi SQ2, Cupra Formentor and Cupra Ateca. And talking of money, it comes in at £42,155, which is about £500 less than a Volkswagen Golf R. And that's an interesting comparison because the T-Roc R gets a slightly older version of the turbocharged 2-litre. The Golf, Tiguan and Arteon all get 320 horsepower, 20 more than the T-Roc. What gives, Volkswagen? Seems a bit unfair on the poor old T-Roc. When it comes to practicality, the 4-wheel drive T-Roc R has a slightly shallower boot than the front-wheel drive versions, but at least it's a decent space and a useful shape and has an almost flat floor, which makes it easy to load heavy items in and out. In terms of ultimate space, at 392 litres, it's still slightly larger than the 380-litre boot of the Volkswagen Golf. Fold all the seats down and that goes up to 1,237 litres. Back here, the seats are supportive and comfortable, but what you do notice is that it's 2 inches shorter than a Golf, which means it eats a little bit into legroom. Not so much of a problem for me at 5'4.5", but if you're 6 foot, you might find that this space just isn't enough. A Cupra Formentor is certainly more spacious when it comes to legroom, but the T-Roc at least makes up for that with better headroom, and there's reasonable space for 3 passengers in terms of width too. Up front, these sport seats are comfortable and supportive for virtually any shape or size. And there's plenty of adjustment in them and the steering wheel, so you should be able to find a comfortable driving position. Once you've got comfortable, you can take in the redesigned dashboard, and it's one of Volkswagen's better recent efforts. The old car had a rather slabby dashboard design with lots of brittle feeling plastics, but the new one is much more up to date with higher quality materials and a sleeker, more modern design. Best of all though, even though it's been updated, the T-Roc hasn't been forced to use the fiddly touchscreen and touchpads that you get in the Golf and the ID3. There is a physical control here for the stereo volume and also buttons down here which are clearly visible and illuminated. They're still touch buttons, however, they work really well and they're quite easy to use on the move. Unfortunately, the same can't be said of the steering wheel, which gets touchpads that have the infuriating knack of not quite working when you want them to, while simultaneously being far too easy to knock accidentally when you're turning the wheel. That said, this is one of the better interiors and infotainment setups that Volkswagen offers. So, what's it like to drive? Let's find out. Even despite that power deficit compared with the Golf R, it still packs plenty of punch. 0 to 60 takes less than 5 seconds and it has a top speed of 155 miles an hour. The T-Roc also misses out on the multi-link rear suspension, getting a more basic torsion beam setup instead. On top of that, the Golf has torque vectoring technology, whereas the T-Roc R does not. This means that the T-Roc ought to feel less grippy and agile than the Golf R on a twisty road. Even though the T-Roc is taller than the Golf and misses out on some clever handling technology, unless you drive them back to back, you'll be hard pressed to tell the difference. So if you like a higher up driving position and chunky SUV looks, then you won't feel like you're compromising when it comes to handling. What's more, if you pick the optional adaptive dampers, you can choose to set the suspension up either in a stiffer, more sporty mode or a softer, more compliant mode. In fact, the softer setup works very well on bumpy UK B roads because the suspension is controlled enough and yet it manages to keep you well insulated from potholes. Head out onto the motorway and the T-Roc proves itself to be a refined cruiser too, but not an especially fuel efficient one. Volkswagen's official figures put it at 33 miles per gallon. We reckon you'd be lucky to get 30 miles per gallon, drive it a little more enthusiastically, and that figure is more likely to look like 20 miles per gallon. And one thing encouraging you to drive more enthusiastically in this particular car is the optional sports exhaust. It makes what can be a bit of a humdrum sounding engine a whole lot more interesting. But that exhaust is expensive, £3,500 expensive. And that's the T-Roc's problem. To make it the best version of itself, you really have to raid the options list. That exhaust, the adaptive suspension, the 19-inch alloy wheels that cost £800 and make it look really funky. It all adds up. Once you add in this car's fancy matrix LED headlights, heated seats, rear view camera and upgraded sound system, it's £9,000 more expensive than the basic car. Without that extra cash, the T-Roc is still a good sporty crossover, but it lacks that sparkle, that little bit of spice that comes with some of those expensive options. What do you think? Is it worth the extra cash, or is the basic T-Roc R good enough? Let us know in the comments below, and if you're considering buying a Volkswagen T-Roc R, or indeed any car, head to cargurus.co.uk to find loads of great cars for sale from top-rated dealers, and with our super clever pricing technology, we'll even tell you whether it's a good deal or not.